starting 20 minutes late. This is painful. Anyways, this goes here. Hello? There it is. So I need to start this. Okay. Finally, fucking live streaming services have started to work. What? Uh, uh, I don't know. Anyways, besides this, what else do I have to do? Okay. I should be closing this because I don't need this. I also close this because I don't need it. Can go over here. Check what the fuck I am trying to do. Yeah. So, wanted to pull up this thing, right? If I remember correctly, wanted to go over here. I need to open prof. Yeah, let me copy this from here to here. Okay, proceeds this. Also paste Steam. This links. What? Ah, I didn't choose this. Hello. Okay, there it is. Apply. Also, wait, because I saw it coming. This time around, we have this working. Is this working? Yeah, it is working now. Seems I can make this. I can also close. Okay, this is done. I can close this. I can go to here. Is Reddit going to work or not? Reddit, what the fuck? Is Twitch Discord bot? That's what I wanted to say. Is that going to work or not? That is a good question. But okay, besides that, I can also go here. And what else I can try to do? That is, let me open up here. I think with this, how much time do we have left? Like, okay, a little bit more than what I expected. I can move from here to... What the fuck I'm trying to... Ah, yeah. From here to here. Well, I don't really want to say anything over here. If there is... Well, there is. Ah, nice, there is. There is. Nice, amazing. Let me drop this thing. Let me literally copy the other format. I believe that is the best way to do this, to copy somebody else's work. Let me hide this. This also goes 1.25, yeah. And yeah, I know what I need to do. I need to go over here. I need to change a lot of stuff. I need to hide this. I need to move myself over here. I also need to topics, properties. Yes, 50, 60. What am I doing? 60, 20, 10, 6, 50. Okay, so that's that. Now, what else? What else? What else? What else? I don't have. Ah, okay, okay. I think I will be. I never really thought about it. I mean, I would have wanted to have something like a way to ping myself when it comes to seeing if there is any Bob redeem that I need to do, but I don't know if it is possible to do it so that only I can hear it, or if I can only hear it myself, there is a way in which I can have that work consistently, so that I don't have to worry for anybody else. How to say it? Yeah, for anybody else sake, if they are going to hear it or not, and it is really only me who is going to be a participant on that thing. Also, I am ready, and we have like 4 minutes. Yeah, almost 4 minutes more to wait. What is this? What is this? What? What am I forgetting? I know I am forgetting something. I can't be ready this fast. Uh, hmm. Hmm. It seems kinda suspicious. Yeah, I need to lower my volume. Not my own volume. Yeah. So far, I think it will remain like that. So far, because I don't think I. I will really late. You let me. Let me? What the fuck is we got to do? Also, hello, Sana. I didn't see you there. No, good one. How much time do we have left? Ah, okay. One last repeat of the song. Nice, nice. But I am worried because why is the microphone not so loud as it used to be? What is wrong with this? What is going with the mic? I think I moved the microphone at some point or something like that. I I can't fix this. I am not a professional. I don't get how is it that I fix it. But well, besides that, hello, here we are. I think I have finished almost everything that I wanted to do so far. So let me check that. Also, how much? 1 minute and 30 seconds. Yeah. Not really that much more. Mhm. What the fuck is going on? No, no, this is so sad. But anyways, let me ignore that. Okay, we have like 1 minute. So in 1 minute, I can probably say something along the lines of. In 1 minute, I can say. I think that is kind of a weird statement, but at which time I need. Okay, it is 5:13 now, so I need to make it 5:14. Okay, 5:14. 3. What the fuck is 3? 00. 00. What? We're on the hour. We're exactly at 00. Oh. Anyways, I didn't go overboard. You are going crazy. Hello. Here we are. Hello, everybody. We are yet another day, almost in time, like less than 20 seconds late, quote unquote late. Um, well, yeah, I hope everybody is doing fine. It has been quite a long time since the last occasion that we we came here, and since the last time that we appeared and we did anything. I think so. And well, obviously, it has been even longer since the last occasion in which we really participated in anything of minimal mental requirements. I will say something like that, as to hmm, hmm, as to indicate that yeah, we had been simply enjoying our weekend. I will say we had we had a very comfy. What was it? Saturday, I think it was, and we're capable of enjoying some very chill karaoke. But besides that, everything else that had also been going fine has been the continuous efforts that we have been making. And yeah, the happy thing I also think about is that we get to be here and we get to keep continuing with our different wishes and such things. So that is nice, I believe so. So yeah, without further ado, sorry. Um, hello, hello everybody. Here we are yet again, being happy, continuing with our efforts, and yeah, trying our best. As always, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for lurking. Thanks for everything. Yeah, here we can say that we start. We we have not that much more to really say so far, because we are just getting started with this. And also, hey, hello, Klondike. I hope you are doing well, man. Um, here we are. As I have been saying, basically, yeah. Here we continue with this. Um, After quite a serious last time, we go back into normality, into what is really expected from us, let's say, or what is the main goal here, besides karaoke and such. So yeah, nice to see that we can continue. And yeah, if it is then everything going well, I can certainly say that it is a good notice. It is a good it is good news. I will say. And yeah, so far also, I think I had been doing pretty well. I believe I had been enjoying myself a little bit more lately. I had been giving myself the chance of being more present. And yeah, I think I am doing well lately. Or I am doing, how to say it? I have been doing great since almost since I streamed. I have been doing well. Somehow it has been one of the best ways to keep my mood in check. And this past month or so, I have been taking even more care of myself, because I have started to notice those problems that I used to ignore before, which ended up in one way or another making me have different problems. And now I can confidently say that I am doing good. As before, although I was also saying it confidently, it came from a place of ignorance. And I believe now, I won't try to lie, I know that what I have isn't that much, and what we do here isn't that big, but it is still is something enjoyable, and it is even more. Something something that will keep expanding, let's say. So happiness has been found, has been ensured on this long travel, I believe. And yeah, I think that is the so far to finish that properly, I think that is the most gallant way in which I can say that yeah, I am doing well. Don't worry. I believe so. I believe so. I enjoying life has become one of the greatest pleasures of my potato self. I will say. So yeah, yeah. Besides that, I have been this past time thinking, and I have been. I, d- I don't really know since when I had this one idea, but I was harboring inside of me this concept of I had been, as I said many times already, we keep learning and we keep developing understanding about certain things, no? And it is always a pleasure to be here, and it is always nice to do whatever it is that we get to do here. And something certainly interesting has been how much we end up going over different amounts of knowledge, and this isn't by itself that relevant, but and this is where it becomes more interesting, I believe. I feel like sometimes we get the possibility of enjoying the different interactions born from all of the things that we used to talk about here. Or I can, and this I kind of say it that with a level of sadness inside of me. I understand that what I go through is only my own perspective, so I don't get to show others and even less to transmit to others all of the different things that I learn. But the continuous progress that we have made since I started all of this work has been incredibly evolving in a manner in which the me from half a year ago approximately um, will have no comparisons to the present me on one hand, and on the other one even more. What is surprisingly amazing is the fact that the me from even a month ago is different from the actual self that is present here and is also the one who is trying to continue with all of these crazy things, I believe. And I don't know, I think it is kind of a consequence of always trying to be, yeah, to be better, I believe. I had been, I haven't trying yet to fully organize inside of my head a proper vision of this concept of atomic habits and um, tiny steps towards different goals and such. And I believe that certainly, or I am now, better to say, I am now starting to believe more properly what are the capacities behind using your time with mm, enough attention to detail so that you get to do those things that you want to in a manner in which you now truly enjoy going, not simply going, doing and performing those things that you have been perfecting, let's say. And in this case, all of these efforts had had ended up paying off in a manner of nowadays, whenever at the very least I find myself here, it is one of the most comforting. I don't know if it is a feeling, if it is an aura, how to say it. Um, it is nice to be here. Um, I don't know. On the other hand, yeah, I see what you say, like I believe that. Okay, I will say like this. I believe that certainly there are some things that I lack, But I do enjoy quite a bit managing to overall continue doing this also, because even if you wanted to do something, sometimes it does happen that you don't really get the chance to continue working on those objectives that you set. And in this particular reality, I believe, um, we are almost everyone capable of continuing with all of those wishes and all of those goals that, once again, we, at the very least, I hope, we were capable of setting up for ourselves. And it is very pleasant, I believe. The different rewards that you slowly start to notice that exist in your life are amazing on one hand, just because of the benefits that they bring, and also there is this concept that I always try to apply, at the very least to myself, and that is to take some time to distance myself from what are the particular events in which we are involved. And it is a wonderful thing to once again notice how many things have changed from one week to the other, from one day to the other, from one month to the other, from one year to the other. And it is pretty much rewarding once again to keep doing those things that in the short term feel not that mm, not that deep or not that impactful, but in the long run is where they end up becoming pillars of the upcoming changes that ended up happening. And it has been the main goal was to utilize myself as an example here. I believe everyone has that capacity, and I had been trying to express it better, not only for myself, because once again, I can sense it and I can see it now while it's happening. I am I am grateful because I get to practice all of the things that I have been learning, and I get to think about all of the things that I have consumed, and I get to delve in all of the topics that I really particularly wish to, and it has been, on my case, once again, a wonderful experience. But I don't believe so far that I have that capacity to fully transmit such a message to somebody else so far, and we will see. I believe that at the very least, the desire to manifest something of that sort will end up bringing, in some way or another, a better yeah, better argumentative capacity, so that in the future, if it were to arise, the tiny potato self that is me will be capable of properly giving those tools born out of the interest of making others also express what they are trying to, and continue with those things that they know they are capable of doing, or they might not fully believe right now that they are capable of doing, but they can do in the future. And yeah, I mean, I I don't know how to see it so far. I I have started to accept that this has been, or that this is going to be, an infinite path towards somewhere. I don't I don't believe I will reach a point in my life in which I will say, or I will from there on know that I reached the peak of my knowledge, because I believe there is something deeply interesting with what you learn and what you get to interiorize in terms of knowledge. And because there is so much knowledge out there in this world, and there is so many, yeah, there are so many different notions to integrate in your life, that maybe if I were to live, I don't know, 100 years, it will be capable of. Yeah, it might be a possibility, but So far, I don't think I will reach a point in which I am going to say, "Oh yeah, I have finally, um, I have in how is it that I say it? I have in my left hand the illumination that I have always desired, while in my in my right one I hold the knowledge to solve any problem that presents in front of me." I don't think something like that will happen in any day in the proximity of my life. So, at the very least, what I am trying to do so far is to get as much as I can ready for as many different situations as I also can. I believe so. Um, it is, once again, a pleasurable experience to keep moving forward and to keep evolving even further what sometimes even feels that had a previous limit. Because at least with these things, I don't feel like we have yet gotten even close to the limits, I would say. But I don't know. It sounds, yeah, sometimes I over worry, and I believe it might sound a little bit mm, overwhelming for somebody else, but certainly it is a pleasure. It is incredibly a pleasure. And I I don't know yet also how to fully express that, but that is good on its own way too. And yeah, I believe if anybody has the capacity to express how much of a flavor, yeah, of a flavorful experience they possess about things, if they did it when they have those capacities, they are going to enjoy those things even more. Because when you get to understand what you have, when you can fully express into words what is it that you like and what you're doing, you did it because you have observed such matters in such details that you get to dissect almost exactly why for yourself it feels good. And when you do that properly enough, you end up encouraging yourself to do what you are capable of knowing feels good. Because this is a very basic concept. If you know that something feels good, it is because you also know that something feels bad. So this is yet another way to practice that same idea, I believe. But I don't know, I don't know. I think sometimes even if it isn't the most rewarding experience, it can have its different benefits. Once again, even if it doesn't feel as the most rewarding thing, but I I don't get to decide that, and even less I don't get to force that on anybody else. So I guess I will have to shut up in that sense. And as I say shut up, I will drink water because I have drank no fucking water today. Let me do that. I have just noticed that today has been a waterless day. Give me a second. Amazing. Anyways, going back into what I was trying to say, or the line of thoughts that I have. Um, what the fuck? No, I am not there. I can I can speak yet. I can speak still. Sorry, yet. Still, here I am. I am so far. I am not there. So far. So welcome, welcome. I hope you are doing well, my brother. Is that okay? Ah, wait. How do I manage? No, I need how. Give me a second because I thought what you said and your claim was quite logical. So you need to be rewarded for that. Gimme. Manage rewards and challenges. Yeah. Guitar riff, edit. Where is it? Where is it? Cost 1,000 points. No. It is 750. Uh-huh. Save. There it is. And now you let me, because I also need to manage that. I have the possibility of returning to you those points, or the possibility of um, stealing from you 200, no, 750 points. So I I will, yeah, I believe the best thing is to give you back your points so far. But I will still activate the riff, because it is true that I needed to do that and I forgot. I need to decrease the price. Also, what the fuck is the riff here? Um, clock, shut up. There it is. There it is? Okay. Okay, there it is, there it is. Nice. Um, so, yeah. Here we are. So, I don't know. It has been quite a nice time since the last occasion that we were here. I hope everything can go well. We have to study a little bit more, I believe so. I Yeah, I am certainly vain. So allow my vanity to show. I had done almost nothing in terms of learning today. I want to learn a little bit more. Allow me to indulge my brothers. I want to learn because I have been having some. I never thought it was going to happen, but I had some problems. That is, I know so much that the time I have on school means nothing because I already know about such things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the guitar sounds nice. I will never say that I don't like it. It has been one of those very few songs that I have come to love. But I think it also is because of how skillful it sounds. I think, no? I don't really know. But I can also say that I quite like it. But once again, just in case, because there is people who likes to complain, I deactivate that just in case. But yeah, continuing. I didn't expect to know um, things to the degree to which I did, and I wish it was boasting, but the problem is I am too bored when I am in classes and I have nothing to do, and I get there are very few classes in which I get to be with professionals who also talk to us about their cases, because um, I should have mentioned this already here, and that is I had started studying psychology, and those professionals that share their cases, those are the best things to always hear about, because they are one of the most precious gifts that you can be given when you're studying something, and that is the particular knowledge that somebody holds about a very, very clear situation which they went through, so that you know what they are going to tell you is fully interpreted from their own perspective, and even more because that it's only the benefit born from somebody telling you their story about something. Furthermore, it gets even more increased when the one that you have in front of you is somebody who also knows how to communicate their ideas. It is a wonderful thing to hear somebody like a teacher in these cases explain to you and dissect with you the different experiences that they had applied to the, in this case, to the possible show or um, academical path that you're going to take, because certainly those very particular things, like, I mean, I believe it is the details in the stories that make it more interesting than just simply going over studies themselves, because you can also have studies in which you go over different cases about different people experiencing or being put through different experiments, but the studies themselves are lacking the particular details that show you in a human communicational proof way this is something that really happened. And I believe probably I will make the counter argument that certainly it is kind of damaging to be so attached to something like how somebody tells a story instead of believing whatever it is that they tell you or not believing it, because that will be the most cautious thing in these cases. If if it simply sounds believable doesn't mean that it was a real event. So certainly there is a problem, but yeah, I might have not really noticed that one tiny tiny thing. I will excuse myself behind of. Um, I don't know. Mm, interesting somehow. Very interesting. But well, anyways, besides the point, once again, I believe it will be so far worth it, whatever we are going to learn today, because that was the point here. That I don't know yet which things we are going to learn, but I know it is new content, and that makes me happy. Um, but wait, because it has finally happened. The reef has reached not 5 but 7 minutes. So let's all say thanks to Wonkum who played the reef for us. And now, that up guitar, there it is. Yeah, yeah. I believe it is. I hope it is going to be new content at the very least. I don't know. I don't never really contemplated that at some point I was going to reach a limit on how much I really knew about stuff. I guess mm, yeah, I never thought about it, being honest. I I think yeah, the attitude of the attitude of always trying to believe that what you have and what you possess in terms of really trying to do your best and trying to not just do your best, but try to learn as much as possible also encompasses the fact of you shouldn't see yourself as somebody who knows about anything at all. And the problem with that is there are some points in which you'll have to accept that you know. Because certainly, if you don't, like it is happening to me, you're going to be spending your time. And I guess in my case, it is a procedure that is necessary because it isn't that I need to know it so that I can use it. They need to know that I know what they know. So they need to test if what they are trying to teach me has been properly absorbed. Or, as it is in my case, no matter where is it that I learn it from, I can use such knowledges to hold myself in good enough regards in terms of creating all of those notions surrounding the creation of something that is good and enabling once again myself into a path of better and more solid capacities at work. And certainly, in this case, I am saying it very in what is it? First person, because I am just thinking about it, but the reality is probably it happens to anybody. If you have found yourself trying to learn a job that you, or what is it? A skill? No, it isn't a skill. A job skill. Um, commodity. I don't remember the word. Anyways, let's go simply with 10. If you can learn sufficiently good a job, you still have to show others that you know how to do that job. And I guess, yeah, this one, that one I do know that the titles themselves should serve as a proof that you know, but it truly is complex or hard to get to see if what you did learn about was really integrated into your knowledge or not. So, by giving you uh, how is it mentioned? Diploma, I think it is on English, or title still serves the same function. By giving you the title of somebody who has done a career and PhDs and such, you get to circumvent the necessity of proving that you know, because that supposedly indicates that you already know. But I don't know, I don't particularly I don't think that much about it in terms of trying to see if what I do know about has been integrated or not. So yeah, I wouldn't have the capacity to say this time around. But regardless, I believe, um, or yeah, regardless, certainly, um, it can still have a lot of usefulness to try the best or try your best when it comes to learn about things. Once again, going back to this point, to take things from from an stance in which you assume that you do not know what you're going to find, because well, yeah, this one I remember hearing about. This one is very good. If you assume that what you're going to find in a certain place, you're already predisposing yourself to judge the content that you are going to get exposed to, even if it is certainly something new. So, by itself, that is already a problem. And by itself, that is already a negative thing to have, because the least thing that you will want to experience is to have to deal with anybody who is so entitled to themselves that they believe they already know everything that you are going to try and give them. So it is a negative to assume that you know in any field of expertise. So in these cases, more obviously, when you allow yourself to experience life from a perspective of every single new experience might be once again new, when you allow that to happen inside of you, that is by itself manifesting the capacity of enjoying the different moments that happen to you. As yeah, I don't think there is any other better description as a child does, because you stop assuming things and you just open yourself to the experiences that are out there. But mm, yeah, I believe that it works like that. The only problem is getting to fully articulate such an idea. I I can see pretty much the benefits from trying to live a life that way, and I guess the middle point will be in that case to identify when you already know about something so that you can skip it. But, well, in the modern world, I don't think there are many situations in which you can skip ahead in life somehow. You just need to go through those experiences, even if they are repeated, because you have failed in a way in which the capacity to show that you know was taken from you, because probably and kind of obviously you already tried to do so and failed to show others that you, in one way or another, knew about what you had been trying to tell them that you possessed experience in. But yeah, I don't know. That is one of the many ideas that still need polishing and that might bring, yet again, more and more creative ways to see this, the world in which we live. And as I mentioned before, keep alive that flame of desire to do things. Because once again, once you become cynical with life and you believe that it has nothing more to offer to you, and you start judging everything as if you somehow had been through all of the possible realities that will ever exist on this universe, that is when you probably die the most. Because your wishes are a fundamental part to the force that drives you towards, I wouldn't say, yeah, towards happiness, probably. But at the same time, that is kind of funny, it doesn't mean that doing this ensures happiness. It means that doing this single mindedly will bring as a consequence happiness. If you do something of this sort because you believe that it is going to give you happiness, as in you are pursuing the happiness created by this, you are going to probably not experience such a thing, because happiness is not found when you search for it strictly. It is created from the situations in which you enjoy things so much that you, by doing those things, get to be happy. Something like that, I guess. But I don't know. Once again, I guess it takes quite some time for anybody to fully articulate such an idea. So let me excuse myself behind that as the reason as to why I can't fully say such a concept that I mentally hold. But yeah, anyways, let me, because I have been yearning for it, let me drink water. Thank you very much. I love this. I I certainly enjoy hydrating. That is probably I never really thought about it, but probably it certainly is like my second or third favorite thing to do. Somehow, I can love it. Yeah. Anyways, I wait. No, no, I can't. I wanted to lay back on my chair for like 5 minutes because my back is tired, but I can't move the microphone, so I can't hold it in my hand while I recline. This is pain. I have to stay. Wait. Can I do this? Wukong, are you going to warn every single point that you have on activating the riff? Are you out of your mind, brother? Are you fine? Then it is. You can keep hearing it. Oh, yeah, I need to lay back. I don't want to. What's the name? Get okay, get a cramp in my back. That's a painful thing. I don't want that happening to me right now. So yeah, let me do it like this. So Wait. How much did sound change? Did it alter things too much? It doesn't seem to be that intense at the very least on here on OBS. I don't see any difference so far. Well, I think it is even, yeah, quieter than before somehow. But anyways, here we are. So I wanted to say, I um, I have been thinking today in particular, and I was going through a lot of ideas to decide that it has it has been pretty weird how much time we used to spend doing things that we really don't enjoy, because it is incredibly easy for you to do what you like, and even sometimes for you to force yourself to enjoy doing what you are working on, let's say. So, to find ourselves doing so many unworthy things or painful things, I think will be the best description, has been pretty interesting. I didn't really expect to find myself in such a situation. And after thinking about it long enough, I finally came to the conclusion that we haven't really, as an overall society, I believe, we haven't really taught everybody how it is that you can just do those things you want to do in your life and not worry so much about the rest, because it doesn't need to be so horrible. And there are some parts which you need to endure and which you need to go through. Those are unavoidable, and those are certainly parts of the process itself. But what is not being said in these cases is you don't have the chance, I believe, to hide almost behind anything else in life in terms of getting to experience the enjoyment of, once again, just doing what you like the most. And I I don't get to fully comprehend why sometimes we force ourselves to do so many things that are unworthy of our own time. And I I certainly see those situations in which you are doing, I believe the better description for this will be nasty things, not just bad things, but rather nasty things, for the sake of gaining something that will keep you either alive or will keep you going forward in life. And those situations are very understandable, but they are still sustained by a reason. So you know that you have to do something bad, but you also know what the reward is. So it doesn't qualify really as something that might create or indicate in you that you are not enjoying what you have been trying to go for. The reality is, we have a lot of distractions that feel bad when you are doing them. Or, in the best of the cases, I believe they feel mildly okay. Also, hello, Box. I hope you're doing fine, my brother. Welcome. Um, there are a lot of occasions in which you are doing things that might not really feel good. They might be at best mid, but everything else is, I believe, worth it. You can avoid doing those things that feel bad, and I don't know. Also, I hope then you can get the proper rest. If you have, if it isn't obvious enough, please stay hydrated. Go eat something. If you have just gotten home, go eat something. Go a pretty good way to relax is always take yeah. Eat something, then take a bath, then you have. Is it really 13? How the fuck did it work so much? Uh, so yeah, go and get that well-deserved rest, my brother. Have more than enough for this whole world, not just your country, this whole world with fucking 13 hours of work. But yeah, I hope you can, as long as you last, you can enjoy being here. We we certainly don't go through that many guy emotional stages, so I don't believe, but it might happen that you end up falling asleep. You know, um, insulation. What? Oh yeah. I remember what those things are. Yeah, but I mean, you just need to take your proper time, and also just in case, I hope you use proper masks and such to not get fucking intoxicated with the what is it with the particles that fly off from those things. If if it is that you were directly um, scrapping them off. If you have a better method, then everything is fine. But yeah, I can see now kind of why it was such a long show. But well, I don't know. Um, oh yeah. Then you're fine. You just need to rest now. So that is amazingly nice. But yeah, I had been so far just talking a little bit. We're kind of nearing the hour mark, which I wanted to reach today. And after that, we're going to probably switch finally into learning something. So that's why I was saying that you might fall asleep if you stay here because I sometimes talk slowly. This guy talks incredibly fucking slow. So this is, as they will say, comfy hours, I believe. Well, I mean, if it is the type of thing that I know as insulation, installing insulation shouldn't be as complicated as removing it, because the process of removing it is also related to dealing with the, the stickiness of it and the problems created from um, the different ways in which it decides to glue itself. It should be. It should be. I don't know. I didn't realize that. So it might be a better day tomorrow. So that is, I hope, comforting. But yeah. Also, thank you. I hope it can be good for your rest. Well, um, whenever it happens, it will happen that you will fall asleep. So have a good night whenever. Yeah. I can see it. I can see it. I can understand the example here. I see somehow how it does happen that things like that do get older. But I don't know. I don't believe it is that much of a problem installing a new one. Well, it might be a problem if the insulation. Yeah, I don't. You said with you said all the house. Yeah, you didn't say which type of house, but as long as it isn't once again wood, what you are going to apply the insulation on, that might be easy to do. Maybe. If not, that is going to be hard as fuck. But at least I hope the pay is worth it. The pay is worth the, the job and the usage of your time and your services. Mm. Yeah. Then everything is justified. If you say that it is great, we are going to take it as a truth and believe that it is certainly then going to be great. And also, wait, because I fucking forgot to turn this off. My bad. There it is. Those were some quite long 5 minutes. Um, some almost 11 minutes long 5 minutes. Quite a random occurrence. But there you go, Bunkum. ah, anyways, continuing. I what was I? Ah, yeah. We basically did the base, and yeah, I hope. What? you will have to be paying. That's why it says 5 minutes. It isn't a turn on the guitar riff. It will never turn it off. I turn it on 5 minutes or more if I forget to turn it off, and it ends there, my brother. It isn't an eternal thing. It has an starting and an ending point. So yeah, I am sorry to break it to you. But well, so we are here. We already went past the hour mark. We're enabled to do the best thing possible. No, I am not going to. What the fuck? I am not going to make a 4,000 point redeem. 4,000 points is more than what you will be paying. Yeah, 4,000 points is a lot more than what will be um, an unreasonable price. I would make it if you wanted to make it the whole stream. Let me think about it. 700. Like for 30,000 points, maybe it stays for as long as I am just chatting. If I am only just chatting, it might be the whole stream. But if not, I won't make it. It is incredibly unreasonable of a price. My brother, your request has been turned off. Yeah, no. Think about it rationally. It is 7,050 points. Or 700. Much? 7,500 points. Um, for just. No. How many fucking points is this? Okay. 750 points for 5 minutes. So it becomes now, for real, 7,500 points for 1 hour or almost an hour. So it becomes almost 30,000. Almost. Let's say that it isn't 30,000, obviously, but it is still probably like 21, 22 and a half. So it is quite a good price if you want to have it for 3 hours on, which will probably drive some people crazy. I mean, you know what? I can probably make make a redeem that also is turn off the fucking guitar. That will be a nice addition to add in the future. But anyways, stop distracting me. We need to study. So let me set this up. Give me a second. Give me a second because we need to set it up. Videos, yeah, properties. What the fuck? What is the lecture? Here. The one fucking tab that I didn't have focused. That's where the lecture is. Here we are. Also, because I didn't stop, it lagged. Nice. Okay, here we are. Yeah, now for real. Wow. Lecture 20. And this time is the real lecture 20. Not the lecture 19th that we did last time. So, Anyways, wait, because I also need to change category. Fuck. There it is. The what worked. So we change categories. That means we're learning, people. It's time to fucking learn. Also, shut up, clock. Activate the desktop audio, and here we are, ready to binge some information. This time around, as always, let us all together discover what is this about. This is psychopathology. Wow, this is basically it. This is what we're going to learn about today. Psychopathology. It seems a one. So I think it was a nice topic. If I'm right, if I don't remember incorrectly, better to say, it should be a nice topic. So let us start with this. As always, course is Introduction to Psychology. This is obviously lecture 20. Aha! What I didn't do is copy the link. I didn't copy the link, and that's what I forgot to do on every single place because I also didn't send it to the Discord. It's nice play, I believe. Anyways, no, for real. Let us start with this.
So today and next time, we're going to talk about psychopathology, people whose minds, brain, and behavior are atypical. More often than not, but we'll talk about this in a moment, these people face struggles, difficulties, and a huge goal is to try to help such individuals. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of ideas in psychiatry and psychopathology, a little bit about the ideas of diagnosis and labels, and I'll show you, we'll do a little film of a patient with schizophrenia. But there's an intuition in some places and some lives that are led that psychopathology is rare. And so I'm going to list, here's a list of not all psychiatric diagnoses, but some of them. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, substance abuse, drugs and alcohol, anxiety, panic disorder, phobia, developmental ones like autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, obsessive compulsive disorder. Tomorrow, I'm reviewing a lot of research grants for anorexia and bulimia. So if we take this list that you just saw and heard and ask how many of us in this room know somebody that we care about, could be yourself, could be a family member, could be a friend, know somebody who is touched by one of these diagnoses, if you're willing to put up your hand, who's touched, look around the room, right? An incredible number of people are touched by this. And so it's a terribly important topic to understand and to help individuals and families who are struggling with these things. And in fact, it's estimated, we'll talk about these labels exactly, that about half of all individuals at some moment in their life will qualify, men or women, at least for a brief period of meeting some psychiatric disorder. It can be rare and devastating, like schizophrenia, 1% of the population worldwide, but typically devastating in its consequences. It can be potentially milder, like depression, which ranges from very severe to somewhat moderate, and interestingly occurs considerably more often in women than men, and we'll talk about that next time. There was a recent survey done, a public health survey.
Well, I mean, by next time I will have forgotten that we already talked about this. So let me start talking already. We did, 2 minutes and like 20 seconds of paying attention. More than enough for me to talk. Let me start. So yeah, psychopathology finally. Something very good because this is particularly about learning. Yeah, once again, about all of the different diseases that affect the brain. And I hope it is given more properly because I am butchering the language and all of that. With my broken memory, it is like psycho obviously comes from mind, and pathos comes from the Latin of suffering, I think it is. So it is understanding the sufferings of the mind. That is why psychopathology is used as a term here, not about only psychopaths or anything like that. That is why it is such an interesting topic and why those were the main things that were shown at the start. So yeah, um, I guess also something that was said by the teacher in this case is very attracting, um, or attractive by itself. That is, by learning about the different types of diagnosis and learning about all of these different types of diseases, you get to deal with them later on a lot better. And this isn't just true for yourself, let's say. This isn't just true for what you possess and for what you go through, but this gets to be incredibly useful in terms of utilizing these tools in any situation in which you might find your or those that are close to yourself. Um, because and here is the main thing. Here is the main graphic which shows it. It is in no way something rare to find nowadays, nor something kind of hard to see that somebody from your family, or I think it is kind of being, it was said here, um, it is almost impossible to not know somebody who, by some way or another, has gone through any kind of mental, it is wrong to say it, a mental disease. So, certainly, this is one of possibly the most useful sides of psychology for the people, let's say. But well, besides that, we can start also a little bit analyzing what is being shown here. Aha! I fucking forgot to change quality. Give me a second. Because that is no what? I didn't forget. Why does this look so bad, my brother? What's going on with this graph? Why does it look so bad? Anyways, then I guess so. I I don't remember exactly why is it that some of them are like this, but a lot of these diagnoses have to deal with the different in yeah in social roles, and also how they get boosted or modified by the hormonal changes that each one of us goes through. You know, I guess I can't avoid being quite negative in that sense. This is only focused from the woman and men perspective. You can't really talk about this in any other way because the studies are only focusing on that perspective, and we have yet not found an argument to discredit still using the man and woman model. So far we I want to stick to with that. I'm sorry, but there is no other way to go about this. So yes, there are some big differences between women and men. In some cases, men take the lead when it comes to, for example, the amount of substance abuse. Men have a bigger tendency towards developing any type of addiction and any type of usage, unregulated usage of substances. I mean, there is always this. It isn't a study. It is just the statistics themselves. The amount of alcoholic drivers, or not alcoholic. Alcoholic means yeah, refers to somebody who has an addiction to it. People who were intoxicated with alcohol in blood, who have accidents. Almost 60% of those accidents are created by male. So that is by itself already something interesting to observe. The problem is how you can fully interpret such statistics into reality and such. And it always is a little bit complicated, obviously, because even more you don't get to see sometimes how these things work. But all of this is still good to start seeing how there are some differences here. And also, I say it because later on they will be even bigger and they will be even more noticeable. So, yeah, starting to kind of warn about them. But, well, with all of that said, I believe now we can for real, continue with this a little bit. But yeah, this is probably, as I said before, as interesting as it gets with this um, introductory course.
And we'll talk about that next time. There was a recent survey done, a public health survey, 5,000 young adults, half of them in college like you, half of them out of college. They surveyed them and talked with them, and about half qualified to have some sort of psychiatric disorder within the last year. Whether they were in or out of college didn't make a difference in this study, but fewer than a quarter of those who met some criteria went and sought help. So how, through recent history, have people thought about people who behave differently, who are so depressed they can't get out of bed, who hear hallucinations, who behave in agitated ways in bipolar disorder? And it's as much a history story and a story of culture and tolerance and intolerance as it is anything else. And so, unusual or mad behavior, behavior that's very disturbing and atypical. Now, there's debates about all of this. And so, for example, some people have argued that everything that we call psychiatric disorders is nothing but the labels we give to behaviors that we find uncomfortable or unproductive. Okay? It's nothing but that. It's just variation. Some people are taller and shorter. Some people like vanilla or chocolate ice cream. And some people do or do not have bipolar disorder. All right? So it's a label that's given for just variation in human ability. And we'll talk about that, or human performance. And then there's many consequences of that. Others think that there's a humanitarian need to understand the disorders to help people. So as you think about these two sort of perspectives, you can think that when people behaved very unusually, I'll show you a picture of this, that we think some time ago that people would literally trephinate, that is, make a hole in the skull of individuals to attempt to let out the demons. That was the interpretation at the time. There's a thought that the witch hunts in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Salem trials in the United States, may have involved patients with things like Huntington's or Tourette's. People didn't know how to interpret unusual behavior, and so label it as possession or label it as witchcraft or something like that. Insanity began to be understood as some sort of a disease, but without any approach to treating it or helping individuals. Basically, the process was to segregate individuals away, and you would have very large, pretty scary institutions with people literally chained and living in filthy conditions. There was nobody to care or protect for them. In a London zoo, you could go pay a penny and watch the humans in the cages, and they had not as many visitors as are in London now for the royal wedding, but they had 96,000 in 1814. It wasn't a rare thing to go pay your penny and look at the scary people. More recently, we understand it as an organic illness and a psychological illness, and we'll talk about all of that. But all of this is a huge point that how we understand unusual behaviors in people is tremendously influenced by the historical context that you're in. And we'd like to think we're making progress on this. I think we are. But a generation from now, people might look back and say, how sad, that in 2011, people at MIT were teaching stuff like this, right? Because if they were that wrong, how certain are we that we're that right? So one just has to be a little cautious about very strong positions on these things, I think. Here are skulls that were discovered with a trephination.
Okay. Here, before moving into more wilder, I guess, types of techniques to remove a quote-unquote mental disease, let's go back. I would prefer in reality the graph, but yeah, I don't really care that much. Anyways, we are now finally starting with different beginnings to these notions and such. And throughout the different things that were mentioned, there is something that needs to be brought up or once again talk about, because it is true that there are different instances, but in this case, we have some notions and we have some concepts that also serve us in the sense of understanding even better how it is that we deal and we utilize our time with all of these ideas, because this isn't about just trying to see and trying to work and trying to get any of these things to basically be as useful or as negative as they can for us. When it comes to psychology and when it comes to the analysis itself of the human being, what ends up being one of the main things to point out is always how much we can really, or we can't try to look past the different problems that exist in reality and see, comparing ourselves to other animals, which situations apply to us and which situations apply to every single animal in the world. And mental diseases are not that common in the wilder animal realms. Here in the human realm, something weird happens, and that is we have a lot of diseases that are created just because well, certainly that was a bad way to say it. It is not just. It does happen because we're overly complicated. I mean, an animal probably wouldn't get even the idea of being bullied by getting made fun of every single day because animals don't even have that big of a tendency towards realizing jokes because they don't even believe that they have that much luxury to enjoy their free time with one another, doing things that can only serve as entertainment as we do. So there are a lot of notions already by which we get or don't to understand how is it that we are trying to see and trying to talk and trying to integrate ourselves with all of these things. They're still quite useful, but they won't be fully fully deniable as it was kind of a point being made here that oh yeah they might not be that unique to us. Maybe we can have better solutions for them. Sometimes it is true that the solutions are easy, some others it is not that simple. Life itself in the human realm is not that simple. But well, besides the points into the rest of the things, yeah, we have done a lot of advancements and we have come a long way since we started to try and understand why people do go through different situations, through different problems. Yeah, so it becomes useful to have once again the perspective present at mind when it comes into a factor that we want to use them for the sake of learning and progressing in terms of integrating what we know and using it for growth or problem solving skills. So yeah, so far very good. Now for real, I guess we are moving into one of the main excessively aggressive ways to try and liberate pain. But yeah, we will see. Because I hope later on they are also present the actual methods that work nowadays for solving many of the mental problems that do arise throughout the life of almost every single human being. Because they are quite easy to apply and quite easy to reproduce also if it isn't clear enough. Quite easy to reproduce too. The only problem is hardly anyone really tries their best when it comes to maintaining those factors always going on their lives, or they take a lot of those things as granted. So that's why they um, don't take enough care in these cases of their own mental health. But well, continuing, I guess.
That's very strong positions, I think. Here are skulls that were discovered with the trepanation and some evidence that the person actually survived this kind of radical neurosurgery. But you understand at the time when somebody behaved very, very unusually, people had tried to explain what's going on and tried to do what they can. Here's pretty monstrous-looking devices, heads in boxes and things like this, where people were trying to treat, if you want to call it, or control individuals having very unusual behaviors. Here's a huge hospital that had thousands and thousands. The name of the hospital is Bedlam, and that's what led to the word Bedlam, now more generally used for sort of wildness or craziness. And paintings like this one from Goya showing a madhouse, and it was because at that time, don't forget, when there was no drug treatment, no behavioral treatment, people were behaving in scary ways, and they were sort of put off to the side to be out of the range of disturbing other people. Now, the first step towards treating psychiatric diseases turns out to be a giant misstep, but it took a long time for that to be understood as a giant misstep. This is Egas Moniz, who did something that all of us as scientists would be happy to have happened to us. He won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1949. All right, so the pinnacle, right, of scientific respect throughout the world. And he introduced what's now called frontal lobotomies or prefrontal lobotomies as a treatment for severe psychiatric disorder. And then in the United States, Friedman and Watts picked it up, and they went around the country taking basically ice picks, going inside and making various cuts inside the skulls. By 1942, there were 5,000 people per year worldwide documented, probably more than that. These were, cases. We now look at it as a terrible idea. But at the time, this is all they could imagine, and that seemed better than putting people in boxes or cages, was to attempt to treat it. And even kind of a nascent understanding that very unusual behaviors went with something to do with the brain. We now understand these frontal lobotomies or prefrontal lobotomies, surgery to sever the connections of the frontal lobes, as not treating the disorder, but simply sedating and controlling individuals. That when you made a person who was very agitated, hard to deal with, hard to control, hard to reason with, you gave a procedure like this, all of a sudden they were easier to deal with for the doctors and nurses and family members. And that seemed like progress. And we now understand that simply making somebody behave in a sedated, controllable way is not what we mean really by treatment. But we'll come back to this in a minute, because many individuals who get medications don't like to take the medications. Some of you may have that experience. They feel they're dulled down in many cases, not themselves anymore. And so it's a really tricky issue at what level some medications are, start to approach the same issue of just making people behave in ways that other people find comfortable. So a nice example of this.
Because certainly that is a point. That is certainly a point. We do talk about mental care, and we do talk about mental health in this case, because what was, let's say, is importantly noticeable. It is true that reparations were negative, but what was also mentioned is as equally important in this case. You take care also of which type of medications you're getting recommended and which type of effects are these medications having on you. Not even in nowadays modern, quote unquote modern, science techniques and medications related to the brain and similar are fully understood. I mean, if we're talking about medications in a way in which it is sedative, we don't even get half of different drugs that induce not just relaxation but also some other effects like hallucinations or activations on certain brain parts of the brain that make you behave differently. So no. Nowadays we are not that educated still. We have a lot more to deal with than what is just being mentioned here. But yeah, it is true at the very least that we are better. We are not putting holes through people's heads anymore, at the very least. But the rest are still problems and are still negative things. And once again, troublesome notions. I mean, nowadays we still have the problem of sometimes doctors or psychiatrists giving medicine to their patients just because they want them to behave less actively, when in reality what they needed to do was to moderate their activity, not as it is being talked about here, just to sedate them. So yeah, we are dealing with quite an interesting thing here, but it isn't as simple as it was made sound. Was made to sound right now. We're not yet in a time and era in which any of these things get incredibly comfortable to use. So far, that's not our reality. But we will see later on how it is that, at the very least, we have advanced. Once again, we are not doing any more trepanations, so that is a net gain, I will say. But yeah, moving on from here.
So challenging example of this is from your book, where there's a guy named Ray. He has Tourette's, syndrome, so we classified that as a neurological disorder, but it has a sort of psychiatric pieces. You know Tourette's syndrome from, if you don't know it from your own life somewhere or another, you know it from movies and TV shows. Love Tourette syndrome, like law shows with courts, because what do patients with Tourette syndrome do? They have involuntary physical tics, and part of what they have is they often, during those tics, they curse in pretty horrific ways, okay, in an uncontrollable way. So that's ideal for television plot lines. It's unbelievably hard for the children and adults who have it, because they're often perceived as being scary and dangerous if they're not in a controlled state. So here's a guy named Ray who has tics every few seconds since age 4. Imagine if you haven't been, maybe some of you have gone through this or know somebody, it's very tough on children to have that problem. Tough on adults, but really tough. By the time he's an adult, he's a weekend drummer. He loves to play ping pong, but he's not doing too well in terms of jobs. He loses his jobs all the time, and his home life is pretty miserable. He's a pretty miserable life at work and at home. He tries Haldol, which is a drug that can help with Tourette's. And what happens to him? Is he instantly cured of his tics and the happiest person around? Any of you glanced at this? Yeah.
Slow down and he keeps trying to do things he's used to with his tics and he hurts himself because
yeah, is it slowing? He feels slowed down exactly. So he comes back with a black eye and a broken nose, and now in a controlled, voluntary way, he curses at the doctor. And he says, like just trying to go through a revolving door, his timing is so off that he injures himself, right? Because a drug has changed, in some sense, who he is. And he feels that. He's not himself anymore. He stays on the drug for 3 years, for 3 months. It starts to work. Over the next 9 years, he has a steady job. His family relations improve. He's successfully treated by sort of every objective measure. Happiness at home with your family, you know, holding a job. That's sort of 2 practical things. But he likes to live a life as 2 Rays. On the weekends, he likes to go off his medication and be himself and be the fast drummer and ping pong player that he enjoyed for his early life. And then he'll take the medication and be the sober, slow, somewhat sedated individual who is, you know, valued at the workplace and can work things out with his family more easily. So it's always kind of, you know, it's always this interesting thing about how you're changing people in order to help them. And then what's that line between changing them to fit in versus helping them? So what is abnormal? And we mean in a very statistical sense here, just, you know, being at the tail end of distribution.
Well, I mean, we're not here for moral debates so far. I understand the idea, yeah, but we are not here for the moral debate of, wow, is it good to just help them enough? Or is it necessary for you to go and step above and give them as many cures as you can for every single problem that it might ever have, so that you get rid of any possible, once again, negative encounter they might find on their lives? We are not here to talk about it, but yeah, at the very least, it is mildly good to understand once again how medicine can sometimes be useful, but, and this is where it is an incredibly big B-U-T, but, my brother, sometimes medicine can go incredibly wrong. And, wow, this guy was cured of Tourette. No, man. There is no, as far as I comprehend it, there is no real cure for Tourette. You can keep it under control, but it isn't going to disappear, and you are not going to get your brain rearranged by just taking some medicine or something like that. You can believe that it is going to happen. The reality is different, and you are going to lose things if you start to really take it as a granted thing almost that you're going to be healed out of your problem. But at the very least, yeah, this is a step in the right direction, I will say, so far when it comes to discussing these concepts. But yeah, we will see, we will see. I don't know. I hope it is at the very least talk about that not always treatments end up going like how we expect them to, and even less with medicine, because I don't want to really delve on this. What you do with medicine is you try your best at low dosages. So sometimes people might react incredibly different to what the average person does on medicines. And even more if they have those concoctions in which they are not taking 1, 2, 3, they might be taking 6, 10. I have met somebody who was taking 19 pills, and with 19 pills, I am sorry, but you might be completely different if you're given something to alleviate your pain. So it is interesting how all of these advanced herbal teas can change you. And it is, if it isn't clear enough right now, it is clearly dangerous to sometimes try to medicate somebody else just because you believe that they might do better than what they are doing right now on Y or X. But yeah, so far we are fine. I will we we can continue. Yeah, we shall continue.
Some things we value abnormal, being abnormal at one end of the distribution in terms of success in life. So what's a mental disorder? It's a clinically significant behavioral or psychological syndrome or pattern that occurs in a person and that is associated with present distress or disability, and with significantly increase of suffering, death, pain, disability, important loss of freedom. So when I talk with psychiatrists and I collaborate a lot with them on research, they emphasize, again, the functional consequence. Can you lead a happy personal life? Can you lead a reasonably successful professional life? And that's almost the most important thing beyond anything. And there's amazing stories that make you think about sources of madness, apparent madness or insanity. And a powerful story for me is the story of Semmelweis. So he noticed as a physician in 1840s that the rate of death of childbed fever in a ward served by physicians was 4 times as high as mothers in a ward in the same hospital served by midwives. At that time, practically every physician was a male and every midwife was a female, all right? But you were 4 times more likely to die. That's a big increase in his death if you were in a ward that physicians served compared to midwives. They wondered what that was about. And he tended to know, furthermore, that the deaths tended to occur in women serially who were in one bed next to the other. There were physical clusters of these. And so he began to think, well, for example, if the priest comes to give the last rite to this person, does that psychologically discourage the next person? And he also found out that sort of didn't seem to tell the story. And then he asked, was it the same doctor going from bed to bed? And the answer was yes. It makes sense, right? Bed to bed, the same doctor's going down the line of women. And what he began to notice is that the physicians were reluctant to wash their hands. Now, this sounds ridiculous, but this is 1840 medicine. And when he asked them why they didn't wash their hands, which we now would consider pretty fundamental in a medical environment, right? The basic response was that it was unmanly. Like men didn't wash their hands. Okay, I'm a doctor, I'm a man, I don't wash my hands. I'll come back to this in a couple minutes. So he asked them to wash their hands in a solution of chlorine and lime. The deaths fell from 12% to about 1% in 15 months. Right? Many lives were saved because the physicians simply washed their hand and did not carry infections from one person to another down the row of childbearing women. 1848, there's a revolution in Austria. He's fired from his job. The doctors immediately, you would think this would be a better world, but the doctors immediately are happy they no longer have to wash their hands, and the death rate goes right back up. Joseph Lister in 1880 figured out, formerly Listerine, but Lister, what was going on in terms of cleanliness and sanitation. Semmelweis in Austria becomes crazy, he runs around to people in the street, telling them to wash their hands and avoid physicians, and he dies in a mental institution in 1865. And imagine if you were walking here, and sometimes when you do walk on the street, you run into people with psychiatric difficulties, and it can be a bit scary, right? Imagine somebody runs up to you, right, and tells you, God's sakes, avoid physicians, and please wash your hands. Most of us would shrink back a little bit. It'd be unusual, slightly scary, right? But who's the crazy person, right? And he's tragically feeling that if he could just tell doctors to wash their hands, he would save lives that day and into the future. So, more recently, there's a compelling story for checklists. I don't know if any of you have seen this book. So in emergency room, you think, okay, that's 1840, but now we're modern day USA, we know what we're doing, and doctors do, and other professionals wash their hands. More recently, there's a bestseller a couple years ago about checklists. So what this was done in emergency rooms, and you may know that there's an unfortunately high rate of errors in hospitals, even among highly skilled physicians in the best of academic hospitals. There's just miscommunications between doctors and nurses, changes of shifts and so on. Just mistakes happen. And they began to use as an experiment a small checklist, like 5 items. Did you do the following 5 things about the catheter or replacing needles or so on? And almost instantly, there was opposition from the physicians. They said, we're doctors, and some of this was at Johns Hopkins, which is, as you know, is a famous academic place, but I think it would apply to every hospital. We're doctors. Now, we're men and women doctors, okay? We don't need a checklist, I went to college, I went to medical school, I did my residency, I got my specialty and my boards. I don't need a checklist, That's for the intern, right? So they really opposed it, but they got almost instantly far better results of safety and including saving lives, almost instantly from the checklists. But the physicians still don't like it because it seems childish. So even to this day, it's a bit of a challenge to get professionals with pride to do certain things that go against the grain, even if it helps people's health. So,
Well, I mean, it is a complicated topic by itself, certainly, because we're talking about here not just about the psychological factors at play with those who possess pride, sorry, but also from the side in which you are sometimes letting go of your responsibility because you believe that protecting those who have pride is good or is necessary. We you are not completely rid. Not that we are. I don't know how close we are to that, but not that we are in any way really close to getting rid of our egos so far as a society, and even less obviously as individuals. It is a big problem that sometimes because somebody tells you confidently enough that what they are doing is good or that what they are trying to go for is the correct answer, you believe them. The problem is confidence is not the only solution to this. Nor nowadays is the only most trustable solution, even less. What you need is always to be capable of proving that what you're saying needs to be like what you're stating. So, in these cases, we have stuff like this. We have cases where you see that minimal changes, once again, we were talking about this, minimal changes can redirect your whole life in ways in which you will have never imagined. And these types of minimal changes that will give you a lot of easiness and a lot of problem solving skills if you can engage properly in them. If you don't give yourself the chance of relaxing, of understanding what's needed to do, and observing properly why things are happening, you will not get rid of any problem that you possess. Be it something as simple as what is being mentioned here, or, or as complex as getting to choose things necessary for your life. Life isn't easy. So, this is one of the many good examples that exist out. Yes, why you shouldn't trust so much your own ego. But well, I don't know. I believe it is at the very least a step on the right direction to mention that it can happen. Sometimes you're going to see people who is going to tell you that they are not willing to believe what you're trying to teach them just because it goes against their egos. And it is, once again, as vain as that. We are very vanitous animals. So, yeah. Continuing from here.
So again, we talked about that some people think that mental illness is nothing but labeling that which we find unpleasant or difficult, nonconforming or deviant. On the other hand, there's two things. One is, again, so many hands were up. I think if you around it, you know that for many, many psychiatric diagnoses, there's a lot of misery involved for the patient, for the family. I mean, it's not just a conceptual argument. And then for many diseases, like for schizophrenia, for example, in very different cultures around the world, the rates are strikingly similar, around 1%. We'll talk about disorders like autism and ADHD where the numbers have gone up. But in schizophrenia, for as long as people have roughly had a definition, around the world is roughly 1%, which is a lot, 1 out of 100 for a very, very severe life-altering disease. So the challenges of diagnosis are huge because no brain disorder for all these neuropsychiatric disorders that affect so many people can be spotted by a blood test or a brain image, none, zero to this day. Everybody's working on it for many years, and that corner may turn, or genetic test, none. So everything is a discussion between the physician and the patient and the family. Everything's a discussion like that. And you can use your common sense and do a good job, but there's risks. So here's a famous study that psychiatrists get really mad about. I'll tell you, okay, and you'll hear why in a moment. So this is David Rosenhan, a psychologist at Stanford. And what he did is he and his graduate students became pseudo-patients. They pretended to hear voices, which is one of the signal symptoms of schizophrenia, to hear voices telling you things. And of course, if you go to an emergency room and say you're hearing voices telling you to do things, you get admitted, you get a psych consult. And then what they did is once they were admitted into a psychiatry ward, they just became themselves again, okay? But now they had the label that they had a behavior at the check-in, at the moment of admission, that looked like schizophrenia. 7 of 8 of these people were diagnosed as schizophrenia by the physicians and nurses who saw them, and it took them anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months to be released. And every behavior they did, like taking notes because they were doing it for the research paper, they were frequently interpreted as another sign of their disorder, like abnormal writing behavior. Okay, and if they got a little bit better, they would say schizophrenia, but now in remission, because you understand once you have that perspective on somebody, then every behavior can be interpreted as a momentary abatement, or if you're sitting there scribbling something, unusual writing behavior. So one pseudo-patient described that he had a close relationship with his mother, but was rather remote from his father during early childhood. During adolescence and beyond, his father became a close friend while his relationship cooled with his mother. Okay, so that's, that happens, right? His present relationship with his wife was characteristically close and warm. Apart from occasional angry exchanges, friction was minimal. The children had rarely been spanked. This is what he told them. This was the truth. Nothing's remarkable in the story, right? Okay, but because you're a health professional who's now trying to figure out why did this person hear voices, the notes were this white 39-year-old male manifests a long history of considerable ambivalence in close relationships, which began in early childhood. A warm relationship with his mother cools during his adolescence. A distant relationship to his father is described as becoming very intense. Affective stability is absent. His attempts to control emotionality of his wife and children are punctuated by angry outbursts, and in the case of children, spankings. This is human. This is not, okay? Because once you have a take on somebody, you sort of look for it, you keep connecting the dots. And while he says that he has several good friends, one senses considerable ambivalence embedded in those relationships also. Okay, you understand that and you could say, but this is just a problem of psychiatric diagnosis. It's all discussion and interpretation. Finally, they were remitted. The patient resumes writing behavior, oral fixation. It's a little too good to be almost true, but there's some stories where other patients were skeptical. One patient said, quote, "You're not crazy, you're a journalist or a professor," referring to the continual note-taking. "You're checking up on the hospital," as if the freed up patients. Now, this is a little bit of a fable because this makes, psychiatric disorders sound like you have a better sense of reality on the world, and I don't think anybody thinks that in a deep way. But it just shows you how far off the health professionals were. So you tell the story to psychiatrists, and they get really mad at you. It's a true story. It shows you the difficulty of diagnosis. The psychiatrists I talk would say, well, they could fake any disease they wanted to and go pretty far, because if you know the medical symptoms and you go and tell a doctor those things, a non-psychiatric disease, you could get pretty far in terms of treatment before they figure out something's not there, right? If you know what to say. So they just think it's nothing specific about psychiatry. But in any case, diagnosis. So what are the criteria for diagnostic categories? Signs are what the examiner sees in symptoms, what the patient says, and a syndrome is a cluster of signs and symptoms. Every neuropsychiatric disorder is basically a syndrome. It's a cluster of things that tend to go together, but individual patient shows a different picture than other people. They want diagnosis that can be relatively reliably assessed, consistently assessed, some sense that there's some validity to do this, but all of this is...
Well. Before we I guess we are going to make a stop here. Yes. It seems so far understandable because it tells out a very good problem that it still exists even to this day. I wish it was only psychology. I would have liked it for it to be only psychology, but you have people that can also fake sicknesses and can also say that they are suffering from something, or even worse, that they have a family member suffering from X thing, while in reality they are either faking it or forcing it to happen. Like, I guess in this case it was said some of the patients or false patients who were in hospitalized showed a lot of differences when it comes to understanding that certainly what they are being given is not so easy, and they went through the efforts of faking some of those symptoms, but some others simply said that they were feeling a certain way, or that they were having, in this case, hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, and it isn't ever so simple. It takes quite some time, and it always is necessary for the person to analyze or to be capable of discerning really how things are going on. Because this problem happens, as I said before, not just on psychology and psychology related areas of healthcare. It can happen on a lot of parts of the medical system itself. The capacity itself of detecting such cases lies only on the hands of professionals that can also be aided with unbiased opinions. And as much of a surprising story it is going to be, we can really get rid of our subjectiveness. It is almost yeah, a necessary tool for for our own survival. So you can't really decide nowadays that no, you know what, I'm not going to worry anymore about what is being said or whatever. You need to believe that what they are mentioning here is at best the way they are just saying it. But I am pretty sure there were some cases in which medication was also involved, and some other types of therapy, quote unquote, were utilized to see if, wow, this crisis and these utterly deranged people are not so well as they are appear to be. So we are going to try those on these new subjects, how it is that using X or Y drug will affect their lives. It is a dangerous topic because it is true and it talks about problems that exist nowadays exist. And once again, letting your own judgmental opinion affect what you're going to do, how you're going to treat somebody, is hard and it's almost impossible for anybody to do. But well, I don't know. I will say probably at the very least, it is good to introduce such a point of view and start to mention something that at the end of the day, once again, legs such a world. It isn't like wow, they barely happen. No, they are like that, and they might keep being like that for as long as they can. But well, yeah. I guess we're continuing from here.
True. And then finally, all these thoughts are organized by experts meeting in hotel rooms around the country and conferences. And they produce a book called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, DSM-4. DSM-5 is about to come out in a little bit. And this is the official list of diagnoses. These are the lists that all doctors use, school systems use, health insurers use. You have to meet the criteria in this book to get a diagnosis. It looks like that. People like to point out that if you pile up the original DSMs with each version, the lists get bigger and bigger. All of these lists are debated in various ways. Let me give you a sense of a couple of the ones, and you can see the ambivalence and the dangers of this. So psychiatrists in the Soviet Union, before the Soviet Union fell, were thrown out of the Worldwide Psychiatric Association because they would regularly diagnose protesters in the Soviet Union as being crazy and had to be put into mental institutions and given antipsychotic medications because only a crazy person would fail to recognize the correctness of Marxist principles in the Soviet Union and the incorrectness of all other competing systems. All right? Now that's what we consider to be politically abusive in the worst sense. I think some of that is thought to go on a bit in China still and other countries, but it was manifest in the Soviet Union. So that we can throw out as really bad, but it just shows you that the dominant powers in a culture can make these decisions. About 20 years ago, if you were homosexual, you had a diagnosis in this book as a psychiatric disorder. On a lighter side, not always lighter side, maybe, people have debated whether video game addiction should count as a real addiction. People debate all the time, what is the borderline between addictions that almost everybody agrees in terms of alcoholism or drug dependency count as full-scale addictions versus other things. What would it take for a person not to leave the room ever, playing video games, right, to count as an addiction? There's debates now in autism.
Well, I believe we can make a stop here, or let's see. Just a second.
They're about to eliminate separate listings of two diagnoses. One of them called Asperger's, which is sort of the milder form of autism in general. They're about to eliminate that distinction. Many patients and families with Asperger's don't like that. And also something called, here's a bad label, PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Imagine if you have a child with difficulty and the doctor tells you your child has pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. That's a child basically who has 2 of the 3 components of a diagnosis for autism. So why draw the line there? And so psychiatrists, I think, reasonably saying, we don't really understand the lines. We're going to call all of these autism spectrum disorders. But you can see these things are shifting over time. These labels move as people think about things, and there's no definitive evidence one way or the other besides best attempts by people to figure out what's going on, and not everybody agrees. Also, I'll talk about this next time. When one DSM switched to another, for example, the number of children in Germany who qualified for ADHD diagnosis doubled overnight because the diagnostic criteria changed. That doesn't mean that which is the better one, you couldn't even begin to prove which is the better one, the original one or the one that had admitted more children into it. So these are tough calls.
Okay. I I have been learning about a very closely related idea, and that is we have a lot of different paradigms when it comes to understanding reality itself, and even more, we ourselves not so much because the average person here probably isn't submerged in any scientific field, but what is more common and what is so much more easy to find is we have a lot of people who believes and who behaves around ideals and around concepts made out of nothing less than the quote unquote scientific community. So this gets to be problematic because something incredibly dangerous happens. There are paradigms that are created instead of these places, and these ideals guide how things should be taken. Once again, the best example was given at the last part. Sometimes changes in diagnosis and ways to diagnose something can really mean night and day differences. Here we are observing how someone who before simply categorized as a very interesting individual who might be mildly hyperactive was now completely diagnosed with ADHD. And this didn't just change for one or two people, it was double the amount of childs who were diagnosed with such a thing. So it starts to get worrisome. And here is also something that is kind of on the realm of problems of the science itself, that is psychology, because we lack proper comprehensions about some topics still, we don't get to know if what we are doing in terms of saying that one or the other is best is good, and how we can fully disprove which one is good or is bad. So we are still epistemologically trying to define and trying to analyze it in a way in which this can get solved and this can be patched completely, so that we don't have to say no, yeah, but because we don't get to see which way we can diagnose people the best, or which measurements of ADHD are the correct ones. We don't get to know yet, something like that. And it needs to change. It is one of the few problems that a science like, in this case, once again, psychology, has. So, well, I guess, yeah, that is, that is interesting. But, well, besides that point, something also good and something rather appealing that was mentioned here was the concept of addictions. Because I am pretty sure at that time it was already starting to be generated more closer to what we have today. Because addictions are not simply things that appear to dominate you, created from one thing. They are rather patterns that you automatize to ignore other things, problems, or deficiencies that you have in your life, or dependencies that you create or co-create with those objects because you start to believe that they are better for you or that they are more useful or whatever. They are problematic and they are negative and they are not that good. And you can find ways to solve all of those issues if you give yourself enough time. But it isn't as simple as that, and it isn't even less, obviously, as comprehensible as we want it to be. A lot of times you will see people that will try to say, as it happened here, that certain things cause addictions. The reality nowadays, what we have defined better and what we know is more accurate is if somebody is lacking different components in their life, they will have tendencies towards getting addicted to a lot of things. For example, and the problem is they might hit a little bit hard. If you lack socializing, you will probably generate an addiction with the usage of your computer, because after all, something that is very, very easy to do is to socialize through your computer, through your phone, through social media. That is why also it is nowadays even another known term that you might have social media addiction and addictions to different particular social medias, because they also provide different ways to engage with algorithms and with people and such. But all of these things are just results of different other things that the human being is lacking. So to provide for those deficiencies, the brain found that X thing ends up being better than just staying in the norm and not doing any one thing to solve it. But yeah, it is kind of complex to to mention good examples. I mean, drugs are also a little bit easy to comprehend, hard to picture in your mind if you have never been in such states. Because, for example, any kind of opioid will affect your brain in a way in which you start to lose capacity to think, and you start to get, once again, obviously sedated, so that you don't have to utilize so much of your mental capacities, because they get almost turned off sometimes. So we understand why some people have a tendency towards getting addicted to those things, and that is simply because not having to think and not having to be part of this world ends up being easier than having to confront your problems, your reality, your necessities, the things that you should be doing, the responsibilities that you have as a civilian. It all is a bigger problem than just, oh wow, is this thing an addiction? Is this thing not an addiction? Sometimes, and that is also um, a very, very good test that so far wasn't mentioned. I hope it is. There are some cases in which people was diagnosed with, oh my god, they are addicted to one thing because they were given very, very basic descriptions without mentioning key factors like a job. If you say that you are 8 hours a day sitting in front of a computer, in front of a very painful to be sitting at desk or chair or office chair or whatever it is that you want to say, it might get first classified as an addiction. But the reality is, the more details you can contribute to the people, the more they can get to see if what you're mentioning is really a problem or not. But well, I mean, it is but just a wish that we hold on nowadays. We are still not even close to dealing with such negative things in our lives. We are figuring out yet how we might be capable of dealing with any of those. So yeah, we don't fully know yet. But yeah, was there also anything else that I should have mentioned? I think no, right? So well, I think what we're going to do now, we have done half of this, a little bit more than half of the video in reality. So I I think we are going to finish this. But before doing so, I I might need to take some minutes because I am not that tired, but at the same time, I am not that capable of going for completely uninterrupted amounts of time. So yeah, let us please take like, I don't know, 5, 6 minutes. We have a little bit of time in our hands, so let us do a short quote unquote commercial break, and after that, we are continuing with what remains of Edit Finch. No, what remains of the video. So yeah, 5 minute break, people. After that, we continue with this. So far, as always, thanks for being here, and remember to hydrate, to stretch, and get ready for when we are back. Here it is. 5 minute break. Destocado, Dios, a whole minute pass, maybe below it. But yeah, we are back. Also, what's up with Vido? Why did I fucking disappear? Yeah. No wait, I have a scene where I don't really exist anymore because I lost that add-on. So let this thing. Yeah. Have a good one, brother. I don't need you anymore. Back to this. Let me let me transition back to here. Well, we are continuing with this, I guess. It was a nice break. I pretty much needed, but well, we can finally we can finally keep going and keep on to all of these things. Oh man, amazing, amazing, incredible craziness, I will say.
And you could say, well, it's all kind of a little bit arbitrary and a bit subjective, and it's true. On the other hand, you got to help people. So why have these labels if there's all kinds of issues? Well, first, allocation of resources. If a person usually needs such a diagnostic label to get services at school, to get medical services in hospitals, to have insurers support them, and that's independent of the kind of medical service you have, right? Second, if you have a label that's somewhat useful for that helps you know what kind of service is needed. Different services are needed for a child with ADHD versus an adult with depression or adult with obsessive compulsive disorder. Different things are needed. A label is needed to even begin to figure out which way to go. And then people also want to understand a little bit what can they predict about the future course of that person. A little bit of treatment and they're fine. A lot of treatment and monitoring needed. You have to do something practical, and the labels help you organize around that with all the risks of these labels. So we're going to focus a little bit on schizophrenia, and I'll describe it a little bit, and we'll see if
we can stop here. Yeah, I believe it is unnecessary to really ask if what's the different usage of all of these levels is. I think I I get the point of talking about them, but at the very same time they are pretty easy to comprehend if you simply live on this world, let's say, because you can always get to understand and to see them being effective in some way or another by just keeping yourself in this society. You can see that by labeling things, you get to make more sense, and you get also to experience the beautiness of having those labels at hand for such occasions in which you later on will need to use them, and you will need to know exactly what is it that you're trying to do and such things. These labels are once again useful in many ways. I don't really see the point behind asking, wow, why do we need them? But I understand it. So far, I understand it. I mean, I hope I can also understand it. It seems not that complicated. It is, but just another tool. I guess here, and here is what I wanted to really say. The only problem is really misplaced levels, because we go back to the examples. I guess if it would have not been mentioned, this would have been a lot easier. This would have been a lot better, and this would have been a lot simpler for us. But sadly, that isn't the reality, and that isn't the way in which we live this world. I can tell you pretty much that yeah, we are we live in a world in which sometimes it can happen that labels can get applied to the wrong people, be it positively sometimes, very few occasions, or the most common thing, negatively. And those negative cases are the most impactful because what gets lost due to errors is bigger to measure than what gets done due to those tiny coincidences, tiny happy coincidences, as they will say. But yeah, I can see pretty much the reason behind having labels. I don't think it is necessary to ask if we really need them or not. Once again, if you don't have a label, if you have name short things, if you don't have different treatments, if you don't have different methods, all of those specificities are necessary for the process of understanding this world better and being more functional, not just as a human being, but obviously even more as somebody who is in some way or another capable of organizing themselves and living freely. But yeah, I I can see it as logical so far. Now, I guess continuing.
So we're going to
Sound?
focus
Okay.
a little bit on schizophrenia, and I'll describe it a little bit, and then we'll see a film. So sometimes the word schizophrenia is used in a kind of a medically incorrect way, which is like multiple personality disorder. That's not what schizophrenia is. It was described by Bueller as a splitting of mental functions, disintegration of emotions, thought, and actions. About 1% worldwide, another 2 to 3 have a partial version of schizophrenia. Practically for every disorder, there's patients who meet the disorder, and there's patients who come close. Okay, and what that exact dividing line should be, and what the value of it is constantly struggled with. Similar around the world, there's slight tendency from birth in winter or spring. People don't know why schizophrenia happens. It makes them think about a virus as part of the story. Patients with schizophrenia are defined as having psychosis and alteration in thoughts, perception, and consciousness. The thoughts are disconnected and loose. They have unusual beliefs or delusions, often of persecution. Somebody else is possessing their thought. They can have abnormal experiences in terms of auditory hallucinations, mood disorders, motor alteration. You'll see in the movie with restless, purposeless overactivity. Can have impoverished social function. For a while, people thought a really important distinction in schizophrenia was between what they called negative and positive symptoms. So the negative ones were they did less of what a person typically does: poverty of speech, poor attention, flat affect, lack of motivation. Sorry, that's negative. And the positive were active things that people don't usually do: delusions, hallucinations, bizarre or disorganized behaviors. Biologically, it's been hard to show that that's kind of a distinction that matters. And so what happens with patients with schizophrenia? Very mysteriously, the clinical onset in most cases is late adolescence and early adulthood, and nobody understands this. So typically it's in your 18, 20, 22, 24. How is it that such a psychiatric disorder waits that long and not much longer in the vast majority of cases? What biological thing is ticking in a person that will lead to a psychotic break with reality? A huge amount of research now is to try to look at individuals who are in their teens and step in and stop somebody before they have the psychotic episode. The positive symptoms are most evident in this acute schizophrenic episode. Negative symptoms often predominate in the long run. Huge variability from one person to the other. In terms of outcome, the outcome often responds positively to antipsychotic drugs. It's estimated about a quarter of patients make a pretty strong recovery, about a quarter remain very disturbed, and about half are going back and forth, fluctuating over the years. So a picture that people will use is, he's pre-morbid functioning, and then somewhere in the late teens, early 20s, some dramatically bad thing happens, and then some sort of stable condition with occasional relapses. And a lot has to do with the challenge of individuals like this taking their medications, partly being organized enough to take them, partly, again, feeling like the real selves is not what the medicated self is. You may know the movie A Beautiful Mind with John Nash. And it's just an example, how psychiatric disorders, challenge people of every mental caliber. So he won the 1994 Nobel Prize in Economics. And if you've seen the movie, although it's interesting if you've seen the movie, also you could go up on YouTube and see him talking about the movie, because they sanitized him somewhat to make him more popular with the movie-going public, because they made it, a more charming disorder than everybody says it was, including himself. But he had a terrific aptitude for math, went to Carnegie Mellon, Princeton for his PhD, famous for bargaining problem and non-cooperative games theory, came to MIT in 1951 as an instructor. And then after doing this fantastic work that won him the Nobel Prize, developed acute schizophrenia. So why don't we watch the movie? Tyler, can we do that? Let me do this. So here's a
What the fuck?
fairly typical patient.
Yeah. Kind of expected. Yeah, okay. I can see why the class is so short. But yeah. Um, anyways. Besides the point is everything else. I had been pretty much thinking. I've been pretty much um, realizing also this when it was mentioned. Certainly something interesting that gets to be brought up is all of this stuff. Because it wasn't directly said here, but schizophrenia is one of the few diseases of the old era. We don't really have a proper term. They're still calling it schizophrenia as a disease of the brain that makes you act very schizo mind, phrenic, active. It doesn't really mean anything at all. We need a proper term and we need to develop proper ways to engage with such a disease. And to do so, that was properly pointed out. Yet, we haven't found how it really appears or keeps happening in anybody's life. We can make ourselves some ideas, we can guess why, how, when, but so far we don't really possess the proper explanations for them. So yeah, so far it is fine what is being talked about here at the very least. No real problem with what is being presented, I will say. The only mention though will be certainly that although in some cases schizophrenia is a very dangerous disease, what also happens pretty heavily and pretty intensely is those times in which not only schizophrenia affects the people who have them, but also schizophrenia becomes one of those. It's not seasonal as some times of the year. It is seasonal in the sense of we have different diseases that hit higher and lower levels throughout decades or throughout millennia. We had an outburst of schizophrenia at some point, and once again, we don't even know properly what is schizophrenia, so we don't get to define why was it that it happened this one. But we have some others, like for example, it is going to happen nowadays with depression, that we have the proper signs and we have the tools to solve them. So, there are some good and some bad things to learn from all of this. Certainly, this is a good lecture, I will say so far. Continuing. Also, yeah, copyright, my beloved.
Yeah. Sorry? I have no idea. Is there any different rate of schizophrenia in people who? That's okay. That's a good. Somebody who were deaf, would they hear voices in their schizophrenia? It's a fascinating question. I have no idea. I've never thought about that. It's rare. It's a combination of the two are moderately rare. Just numbers wise. But that'd be an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know. Any other? I saw another hand or no? Okay. So we know one thing that practically for every neuropsychiatric disorder, there's strong familial evidence that there's a genetic component to the disorder, and a big one. So here are four, this is a very touching picture in a way. These are identical quadruplets, 4 girls who all grew up to have schizophrenia. Not every identical twin will do that. So if one twin has schizophrenia, half the time the second twin will have schizophrenia. If it's dizygotic, it's still higher than 1%, but it gets down to 15%. But I think people have rethought this because very often the sibling or the twin, if you look a little bit more carefully, they won't meet the diagnostic criteria, but they often have struggles of some kind as well. The lifetime probability in a first-degree relative is 10% versus 1%. If you have one parent, it's 13%. 2 parents, 50%. So all of this is, lots of suggestions. There's a genetic basis. Concordance rates for monozygotic twins, for identical twins, is almost identical, whether they rear together or apart, again suggesting a very strong genetic basis. Being adopted away from relatives does not reduce the risk. Having said that, if it's not 100% concordance, there's got to be something else going on besides the simple genes at birth, right? It is higher in urban areas that we think have more stress in them. People have noticed that oftentimes when people move cultures, for example, African communities in London were of recent emigres, they kind of seem to notice a higher rate as well, as a big cultural move can put you at risk. So everybody pretty much agrees that there's what people will call a multifactorial polygenic environmental threshold model. That is, there's a lot of different genes plus environmental stressors that come together in some way we don't understand. And you would think that, with the human genome decoded to a large extent and so on, that we'd have some clarity on this. You can debate this. And certainly identifying the genes that put you at risk for these disorders is a hugely important topic. The progress in identifying certain genes for any of these psychiatric disorders has been horrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Genes that are identified 1 year and the next 5 studies don't replicate it and so on. So people at the Broad Institute across the street now say for them to believe that a gene is associated with schizophrenia, they think you have to have samples of 10,000 patients with schizophrenia and 10,000 people without it. What does that mean? That means there's nothing like a smoking gun gene, right? 10,000 to have enough statistics to support a difference. That means many, many of the 10,000 don't have that gene who have schizophrenia, right? Okay. If it were one gene, one disorder, you don't need 10,000 people to get a statistic. You need 5 people. So it's been a shock to people that there's been so slow progress, given that all the things that can decode in the genome to find the genes that are at the heart of psychiatric diseases, and that's true for practically all of them. So there's something complex about genes, environment, and people that far exceeds our understanding at the moment at every level.
Well, I mean, wait. What is he going to say?
And so people.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to stop here. I don't know for how long, but certainly it is true that we have a lot of problems and we have a lot of interesting notions. Because, once again, it ends up being a reality that we have different situations in which we don't get to understand fully and we don't get to even less fully manipulate what ends up being the reality in terms of seeing, comprehending, and grasping all of these concepts to a degree to which we can apply them properly in any point of our life, and even less in these cases we are not seeing how by understanding in which ways genes might work we can fully detail where is it that we had created, or where is it that the human genome itself allocates all of these diseases. We are, I wouldn't say completely far, probably before most of us dies, we are going to see it finished. It is one of the biggest endeavors of the humanity, and so far we have developed some quite formidable tools for that. But what we have discovered, what we already know, are all of the different environmental factors that also play a role. And that is kind of what I don't like, because it was mentioned for a second there that schizophrenia, for example, can be not modified by the environment in which you find yourself, as in being with a different family that wasn't the one who brought you to this world, as in your biological parents, who had schizophrenia, has no influence on the child. And that, my people, is a complete lie. I am sorry, I don't want to make it sound so negative, but that is the truth here. You're not giving me a fact and you're not giving me something to properly work with. What you're just stating there is outright a lie. Somebody who knows what schizophrenia is will tell this exactly as it is. Schizophrenia, and we are talking about schizophrenia, something that has to deal with hallucinations and a lot of stress on the mind. Schizophrenia easily appears on people who had gone throughout their life through incredibly high spikes of stress itself, or also traumatic experiences. And that is also when schizophrenia can turn not just from schizophrenia itself, but from different ramifications of schizophrenia as a schizoid personality and similar types of problems that are born out of suffering the different symptoms of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is not so easy to classify because it is incredibly wide. Once again, it is one of the old type of diseases that we still carry around as almost a baggage which we haven't fully comprehended. It is the same as with ADHD, things that we believed that we got fully detailed until we started to really observe them, and we started to realize that no, my brother, this is not that way, and this is not something so easy to discard. Schizophrenia is not so easy to manipulate, or not so easy to believe that, wow, today we have here all the evidence to say that schizophrenia has been treated. No, we are not even close to developing a proper treatment for it. And I, 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 I think I let that one slip. 25% of the people who, quote unquote, live a fully normal life still have a lot of secondary effects from the medicine. And a sedated life, I don't believe, is really a normal life to start with. And even if you don't suffer from schizophrenia, I wouldn't want to exchange schizophrenia for to having now seizures. I don't believe it is a worth it trade, even if probably both of them put your life at risk. I don't know how much pain I will really force myself to be on, just to not be so crazy, quote unquote. But I don't know. I mean, it is interesting. It is still quite true what is being mentioned here. To not be so much of an anti, we are getting to learn quite some useful things still. So yeah. Besides that, I guess we can continue. So far, yeah. So simply the point was some things are being said and they are not completely right. And I am not saying it as wow, this fucking lecture and course is so old. No, no, no. Because these things were known even at those times. And sadly, if I had to guess, if I had to blame something, it probably is close-mindedness, close-mindedness. How the fuck do you say that? Closer minds, uh, who are not predisposed to use the newest models which were analyzed at those times. And I will probably also argue that some of them were still hypotheses and such because they didn't have enough proof. Certainly, something, once again, something like schizophrenia is problematic because, and that is true, you need a lot of samples if you're going to try to talk about it. You can't have just 5 samples and say, okay, this is enough. You need to have, nowadays, I think it is almost 25,000 tests proving that what you are trying to go for is the way you make it seem. So, yeah, it is not such an easy problem. But well, besides that, continuing, I guess.
Models like this because it makes us feel better, and there's something probably right about it. You know, there's an amount of stress in your life that can come up from how your, socioeconomic risk, health problems, family situations. There's a predisposition that's genetically based, and some combination of them determines whether you manifest a disorder or don't. So we said there's no definitive biological marker for schizophrenia, as there is for every other psychiatric disease. There's no blood test, no brain test, no nothing that definitively tells you if a person has a diagnosis. But people have been studying things that are on average different in brains, and I'll show you some of the most consistent findings about ventricles, about hippocampal involvement, PET scans. I'll show you this, and I'll show you a few examples in schizophrenia. So one thing people have noticed is that if they compare, these are identical twins, and you can see the ventricle, the fluid-filled space, is somewhat larger in the twin with the diagnosis than without. That's about the least specific brain marker we could ever have. The ventricle just means there's tissue missing around it, okay? It's just this fluid-filled space. There should be a bit more tissue. It's very far from any specific biology of the disorder. And here's the actual twins with their actual MRIs. So we don't think it's the size of the ventricle. That makes no sense. But that's somehow roughly correlated with over the brain basis of the disorder is. And then people have shown, and these are relatively extreme examples, post-mortem samples. Here's the hippocampus in healthy individuals. Here you can see it's somewhat shrunken in patients with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And if you look at those pictures that are kind of picked, you could say, well, that's easy. Give me the MRI, and I'll tell you who has it. But statistically, it doesn't work that way at all. There's tremendous overlap in the size of the hippocampus between people without a diagnosis and people with schizophrenia. So it's a statistical thing. People have also noticed cellular organization sometimes looks somehow better in patients with schizophrenia, the typical people than people with schizophrenia. Again, a suggestion about a developmental history underlying this for the risk, but without any kind of certainty. When they've done studies looking at resting, scanning metabolism, you're just laying there. This is a PET scan. It's just where's the blood flowing. You can see that this is a healthy person. A lot of our blood flows as we sit there to the frontal cortex, and you can see it's kind of diminished in schizophrenia. But again, you cannot put a patient in and say this patient has schizophrenia because many patients will look like many controls. But the average can look like this. Here's a task now of a working memory task. So people see in the easy condition, letters are running along, and every time there's an X, they push a button. That's the easy condition. Here, letters are presented rapidly, and every time the current letter is identical to the one you saw 2 letters ago, you push a button. So this is harder mental work, harder working memory demands. And then here's what you see in one data set. So people, as they're doing this task, they turn on a lot of frontal cortex, working memory, thinking. You're used to that. Here's controls, how much they turn it on, the front of the brain, viewed from the top. Here's relatives who don't have the diagnosis, and here's patients who do have the diagnosis. These are relatives of these patients. And take a look at you can see they're growing. So this is this issue of is more activation better or worse? Well, it all depends. The way we interpret this is, for a typical person, here's how much they have to push the pedal to accomplish that working memory task. If you're a patient, you have to push it a lot more to do the task, and you still make more mistakes. If you're a relative without a diagnosis of schizophrenia, you're somewhere in between. And those relatives are as accurate as controls, but they perform somewhat more slowly. This is a kind of interesting thing. In practically every disorder, if you take the relatives of people with a diagnosis, they often look like they have a kind of a milder version of that. But they may have no problems in their lives. They may be doing flourishingly well in every regard that you can think of. But they harbor some of the same genes. To be a relative means to share genes. And so that can make, so there's something about that happening here or in some subset of those individuals. Practically every study that's done, if you take the relatives of people with a diagnosis, there's some in-betweenness compared to people picked in families without any history of that disorder. But what matters is the boundary, right? I mean, this difference doesn't matter if this person's doing well. This difference is associated with something that really makes a big difference in that person's life.
Yeah. Okay, so we can understand a lot of things, yeah, certainly. There is something still that I would have liked to mention, or at the very least, not to mention myself, to have mentioned there, and that is there are different problems and different situations in which you see that there might be factors. I will guess that was observed later on, just to not try to invalidate so much what is being said here. I will guess that was seen later on, that was properly proven later on. Some, yeah, kids that had gone through more traumas, that is, more amounts of crashes, for falls, yeah, and different similar ways of damaging the brain had shown an increased risk at schizophrenia. There are some cases in which also it is mentioned that even probably what brought it up was one particular instance in which a hit was intense enough so that something got damaged irreversibly inside of the brain. And that happens more often than not with childs and with kids who had gone through the process of schizophrenia from such a young age, because that is also when you're the most vulnerable with your brain. So we have some examples. I don't know why they are not being mentioned in those cases. I think if we are about schizophrenia, they are as important as it gets in terms of seeing also possible ways to comprehend why this might be happening or that might be happening. But I don't know so far. Besides that, besides what is being just said about the diagnosis and such, what also plays a big factor and what also becomes important enough, I kind of mentioned it before, is the stress. And if sometimes you decide to ignore those signals that might reflect on the brain, ways in which the person might not have such a capacity at handling their emotions, you might get to understand also why probably they end up developing schizophrenia. Once again, here we can always give the benefit of the doubt because we're talking about diagnosis, and diagnoses themselves are not so easy to classify because you are dealing with things that might completely change if you, as they will say, squint your eyes hard enough. They are very subtle in those terms. But well, moving on, I guess.
The question about auditory hallucinations in the deaf, this is kind of like that, but this is people hearing people. But one of the things you can do with imaging is ask. Some patients with schizophrenia have rapidly psyching auditory hallucinations. Most don't, most is every here and there. But some have it pretty often. So you can put them in a scanner And when they hear a voice, they push a button. And you can ask, when they hear a voice, is their auditory cortex active? At the level of the brain, is it as if they were really hearing a voice? And here's the auditory cortex active in the individuals at the moment they're experiencing the hallucination. It's real to them because somehow it's engaging the auditory cortex that really hears the world. That's why it's so powerful. Right? And it's somehow engaging the very same tissue by which you really hear the world. How about treatment? So we'll talk next session. We'll talk a lot about different kinds of treatment.
Finally, let's fucking go. But well, I wanted to pause here because I I thought it was kind of expected, but yeah, the different type of hallucinations that you suffer are vivid, and you won't be capable of dividing what you're seeing as true or not. That is why also, for example, sometimes things like sleep paralysis feel so incredibly terrifying because what you are experiencing, what you are seeing, is being captured as such a thing. You won't realize that those shadows that you are observing now, that you started to believe are creeping on you, were never real. If you let your brain take control, it will happen that you will start to see things, that you will start to hear things. And yes, even more in a case in which the brain is completely out of control, such things will happen. But well, once again, my bad. I would have thought it was kind of implied. I didn't expect to get told that, yeah, certainly things are happening there, and it isn't like they are crazy, but they are more than crazy just faking it for the sake of saying that they are hearing things. No, that they are fucking crazy, brother. Do not tell me that somebody with schizophrenia is not dangerous. You know shit about them in that case, if you say so, because their brain is firing at a rate that you will never have going on in your life. You will probably never see stuff like what they see. But you decide to come here and say, no, they might not be real, they might not be true. Whatever, continuing.
Neuroleptics are the most common treatment for schizophrenia. They block, I'll talk a bit about this, postsynaptic dopamine receptors. The drug is fully effective within hours, but maximum clinical effect takes weeks and then remains after you stop. The effect remains after the treatment stops. A huge problem in schizophrenia are side effects of these kinds of drugs. So early on, you induce a bit of Parkinson's disease in patients who never had Parkinson's disease with these typical drugs. There's atypical drugs, they have their problems. I'll just focus on the typical drugs. I'll tell you why in a minute. And then later on, this becomes known as tardive dyskinesia in about 20% of patients. There's a lot of patients. This is you're producing by the drug abnormal involuntary movements, smacking of lips, chewing, and drug protrusion. And there's some drugs that don't do it, but they have other problems. And there is evidence that behavioral therapy can be surprisingly useful in schizophrenia. Most of us hardcore biologists, we think the drug's got to be the deal. I think there's more evidence than you would imagine that behavioral therapy or the combination of the two can be very helpful for people. So you may know now, you wouldn't know this, I know this, okay? Because I'm constantly in the fundraising business as a researcher. Drug companies have almost stopped working on developing treatments for psychiatric diseases. And they've almost stopped because it's been so unsuccessful. The drugs that were found were almost always by happenstance, drugs that were almost randomly tried for various disorders with various groups and worked. None of them were rationally done in any biotechnology sense, okay, or molecular chemistry design sense. They were all practically all of them were happenstance applications of quasi-random drugs, and then people noticed it helped individuals. And so in the last 20 years, where there was much more rational development of drugs, it's been spectacularly hard to develop new drugs for psychiatric disorders. And so most pharmaceutical companies have basically stopped in the last couple of years. They've just given up. We remain optimistic. Everybody thinks they'll come back into the picture when some academics produce some things that look good. But it's turned out to be really hard. And furthermore, many of the medications that are effective have all these side effects, very undesirable side effects sometimes. At the same time, the fact that these drugs affect the disorder has sort of promoted various theories. So once people notice that
Okay, yeah, we're talking about theories here. So far, what was mentioned, yeah, what I wanted to talk about before is finally being mentioned. It is true. It is. It is very dangerous what gets left behind when you don't consider how much of a threat it can be to have people not just with schizophrenias. Wow, we don't want crazy people in the street. No, 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 no. The different type of medications can really alter the way in which you live your own life, and if these medications are uncontrolled, the different consequences of them might impact your life in ways in which you would have never wanted to live it. And not only it is dangerous to create medicine because that is what was missed there. It is dangerous to create medicine. It is also incredibly costly because when you're playing with the brain, you don't know in which ways some medicines might go. If you are just trial and error testing, if you know what you're doing, it is more possible for you to have a more applicated style of approach to the problems and solving them so much more easily. But the average person doesn't even have the pleasure of finding themselves in in a point of simply saying, you know what, I want to solve these problems and I will use these tools. No, you have to do your best. And if what you do is enough with what you created, it will work. If not, maybe you even killed someone or you made the one who took the drugs kill somebody else because they were so hyperactive. You never know. And it is a liability. And we don't want liabilities in our fucking investments, so that is also why they are not so funded nowadays. But well, continuing, besides what was just said, continuing, don't worry.
The fact that these drugs affect the disorder has sort of promoted various theories. So once people noticed that antipsychotic medications, medications that diminish the psychosis of schizophrenia, act on the dopamine system, that led to the dopamine theory of schizophrenia. They said, well, if the drug is pushing down dopamine and that's helping people be less psychotic, then maybe what the real problem is that there's too much dopamine flowing in the brain of individuals with schizophrenia. And that got supported by studies that if you give typical people overdoses of amphetamine, you induce something that looks a bit in a typical person like the paranoia of schizophrenia. And so let's talk about this idea of drug action versus disease. So if you have a headache, what do you take to help yourself with the headache? Ibuprofen or aspirin or something like that? Does that mean the medical problem was you didn't have enough aspirin in your blood? Were you hypoaspirinemia? No, right? The aspirin is doing something else to counteract the headache or the ibuprofen, right? It's not that you were short on Tylenol, right? Okay? But it treats the problem. So if a drug treats schizophrenia by acting on the dopamine system, does that mean dopamine was the culprit? And the answer is probably not, or it's hard to figure out. But the original assumption that the way the drug works gives you a direct insight into what the cause of the disease is, people are pretty much dismissed. But what drew them to it, of course, is still these antipsychotics. The way they work is they block the receptors that take dopamine, and therefore dopamine gets catabolized here and is not used in neurotransmission. And furthermore, amphetamine, which produces a somewhat schizophrenia-like syndrome in some healthy individuals, that accelerates the production of dopamine. So that seemed to favor the story. But again, that's sort of not taken very broadly now. Again, what favored the story was the more powerfully a drug bound to dopamine receptors, the less drug you had to give patients. I mean, all of that you could see make people think this is the story. And it may be that dopamine is a part of the story, but everybody understands now that just because a drug acts on a disease does not mean it's treating the disease in the most direct way.
What the fuck?
And now why do patients get tardive dyskinesia? Why is an inadvertent consequence of treating schizophrenia producing a version of Parkinson's disease? It's because the drugs are too nonspecific. So we know the ventral tegmental area in the brainstem sends dopamine into the basal ganglia and into the prefrontal cortex. Conceptually, what we understand we're trying to achieve with schizophrenia is something like diminishing something about this pathway, where the drug can't just block this, it also affects the basal ganglia. And what Parkinson's disease is a shortage of dopamine in the basal ganglia. In the case of Parkinson's disease, it's because of death of substantial nidal cells, but you're producing a pharmacological version of Parkinson's disease in the effort to treat schizophrenia. Not in all patients, not as severe as Parkinson's disease, but a big side effect in many patients. And there's other drugs, they have their problems. There's almost no drug that's completely successful and pure in any treatment sense for the patient. Yeah. Despite that, there's been a fantastic effect. We talked about that when people...
We have like 2 or 3 different stops to make here. I will believe the shortest one is simply going to be the different consequences from medicine, because it was simply talk about the point of drawbacks created from, in this case, understanding how it is that something, once again, something like the usage of substances and similar drugs will affect somebody also has its side effects, but the reality is the quote-unquote more natural ways also have a big important role on this. And it was mentioned here that it at this point I don't remember. It was like at the middle of the lecture, I think, how this type of physical therapy also helps you, mm, in this case once again, deal with schizophrenia. And there are a lot of diseases that have to deal with the body itself being so still or being so incredibly negated the possibility of finding itself happy. The same as, with how simple postures you can completely change your mood, and you can completely change how is it that you feel about stuff, and how is it that you engage with the stuff. There are big factors out there that we don't really take so seriously sometimes, and these big factors gain even more traction when you take into consideration how much it really happens that these are problems and not just random things that happen out of nowhere. But well, now for real, continuing and almost finishing this, I guess.
People were behaving very oddly, and certainly schizophrenia is perhaps the scariest set of behaviors if you have to pick one disorder in that way. Then, once they began to have drugs that diminished the unusual behavior, people were let out of state and government hospitals where they had been sort of secluded in many ways and not helped in many ways. And people viewed this as a tremendous success, and I think it is, to let people back into the community, interacting in a sort of more typical way, as opposed to being segregated in areas that were often not the best. But there was a fantastic consequence, which is now these people, as you may know, have no safety net. They're back in the community, and if they don't have people who care for them or follow them, they're at risk for themselves. So it's great to give a medication to let somebody out. Everybody agrees on that. But then if you don't have a kind of a safety net of physicians and family and so on, and a person's out on their own, stop taking the medication, who's there to help them? So it's a societal challenge on top of that. So next time I'm going to talk about treatments for neuropsychiatric disorders, but for just 1 minute, I'll ask you, do you have any questions or thoughts about this whole topic? Yeah.
Fuck was asked.
There's a fantastic, the question was, why is there such a fantastically high rate of smoking, which there is in patients with schizophrenia and bipolar? So people will use phrases like they're self-medicating in some way. But I don't think there's you can make up a little bit of a story, but it is very striking. I don't know a deeper story than that. There might be, but it's very striking. It made the voices go away. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a phenomenal high rate of smoking among patients like that. Okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I can pretty much understand what is being mentioned here. I hope it was comprehensible enough. I believe it isn't that much of a dense class. There is a problem. I won't say that there isn't a problem, but the problem itself is more present, not on the whole class. It is rather just on the final part of the class where you have to deal with things like, once again, how schizophrenia affects so specifically some areas of the brain and such, and those things are complicated because you have to, once again, have integrated all of what was being mentioned and what was being talked about when it comes to parts and when it comes to different effects that it has on the body and how in the brain it can be allocated in X or Y area. I can understand why that one particular side might be complicated, but the rest is pretty much easy to digest, I believe so. So yeah, I wouldn't really try this time around to add that much more. I don't feel like we have a necessity of adding that much more. I believe, once again, even if it might be some type of complicated disease, what was the second half? The first one was a little, not a little, a lot better, sorry. Yeah, and also a lot easier to handle. But yeah, so far I still also think there are some different lessons and there are some different notions to take advantage of. So yeah, we can see how it gets very, very good with those things in mind and with those advantages as well as useful notions into what ends up being this whole chalice of, yeah, of knowledge for a better, in this case, I would say, usage of time. But so far, yeah, I believe it was good, and I believe it was digestible enough. I hope so. I wouldn't really try to add that much more. I even worry this time around that it might have been a little bit of a info vomit in some or other ways. But yeah, anyways, we are we're done with this. With that, we are done with this. I can properly say. So yeah, as always, I guess thanks for being here. Now, what will probably be is where do we raise? There is too many people. Eh, wait. There is a debate still going on. Is this still streaming? Is this still up? Are we, are we real? Is this really happening yet? Oh yeah. Anyways, yeah. It has been pretty good. So we can say goodbye, people. As always, thanks for being here, thanks for watching, thanks for looking, and well, keep yourself safe. It has been a pleasure. We will see what will be of us next time, and thanks for stopping by, thanks for watching, thanks for looking. Have a great night, and remember to sleep well, to hydrate, to take care of you. And yeah, it was good. We will see what we do next time, and even if we don't, at the very least, we enjoyed some beautiful thinking. Well, as always, thanks for everything. Have a nice one, people.